She wasn't looking for love, only a place to disappear for a while. But when a man with eyes full of secrets sat beside her, one small favor turned into the story that would rewrite both their lives. As you enjoy this story, remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more breathtaking stories. Also, tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get back to the story. The laughter in the hall shimmered like champagne bubbles, light, effortless, and everywhere. Crystal glasses clinked, silverware chimed, and camera flashes painted the air with bursts of joy. But amid the sea of smiles and silk dresses, Ella Morgan sat alone. Her place card had been delicately printed, her name written in gold, but the seat beside her stayed empty. Around her, friends chatted in clusters, couples leaned close, and everyone seemed to belong to someone. Except her. She tried to smile, tried to hide how out of place she felt. The wedding had been beautiful. Her college friend Leela looked radiant, the groom beaming as though the world had paused just for them. But weddings had a way of reflecting back what you didn't have. For Ella, it was love. Or maybe just connection. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother. "Remember to enjoy yourself, sweetheart. You look lovely. Dad sends his love." She smiled faintly. They always worried about her. Their only daughter in the big city, 28, single, working long hours as a graphic designer. Independent, yes. Successful, somewhat. But happy? She wasn't sure anymore. The waiter passed, offering champagne. She took one, more out of politeness than celebration. Her eyes drifted across the room, and then she noticed him. At first, he was just another well-dressed guest. Tailored black suit, clean jawline, eyes that seemed to see more than most. But there was something quiet about him. Even in a crowded room, he seemed alone, too. He wasn't laughing, just observing, calm, composed, detached. Then, unexpectedly, his gaze met hers. For a heartbeat, Ella froze. She looked away quickly, cheeks warming, but curiosity tugged at her. And when she dared another glance, he was already walking toward her table. Her pulse quickened. He stopped beside her seat, offering a polite smile. "Is this seat taken?" She blinked, caught off guard. No, it's just me." "Perfect," he said simply, pulling out the chair. "Mind if I sit? I need a favor." "A favor?" she echoed, both amused and confused. He leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice. "Long story, but if one more woman in that corner tries to introduce me to her daughter, I might not survive the night." She followed his gaze. A cluster of elegantly dressed women were indeed watching him with not-so-subtle interest. She laughed before she could stop herself. Ah, the matchmaking brigade. Exactly. He extended his hand with mock seriousness. "I'm Math." "Ella," she replied, shaking his hand, her laughter lingering. "So, this is your escape plan." It was either that or fake a phone call about a business emergency. But pretending to have company seemed more polite. "Well," Ella said, sipping her champagne, "I'm honored to be your accomplice." For the first time that evening, she felt her shoulders loosen. They talked, at first lightly, then easily. Math was sharp-witted, but not arrogant. Beneath the confidence, there was a gentleness in how he listened, how he let silences breathe without awkwardness. "So," she said after a while, "you really came alone?" He nodded. "Business partner's wedding. Didn't want to make it complicated." "And yet you're pretending to be taken?" He smiled, eyes softening. "Some loneliness is easier to fake than explain." Something about that line caught her. The honesty in it, the quiet weight behind his words. For a brief moment, the noise of the hall faded, and it was just the two of them. Two strangers sharing borrowed laughter and unspoken understanding. As the night went on, people began to assume they were a couple. Someone even commented, "You two look good together." They laughed it off, but Ella felt a strange flutter in her chest, one she hadn't felt in years. When the last song played and guests began to leave, Math stood and helped her with her coat. "Thank you, Ella, for playing along." "It was fun," I said softly. "Besides, you saved me from looking like the loneliest person in the room." "Then I guess we saved each other," he replied with that same quiet sincerity. Outside, the night air was cool, scented with rain and roses from the garden. A sleek black car pulled up. His, I assumed. He opened the door, paused, and looked back at me. "Maybe next time, we don't have to pretend." Before she could respond, he smiled, got in, and the car rolled away, its taillights glowing red against the soft drizzle. Ella stood there for a moment, her heart racing with a feeling she couldn't quite name. Hope, perhaps, or curiosity. Whatever it was, she knew one thing. Tonight, something had shifted. And though she didn't know it yet, this night, this pretend moment, was about to change her life forever.
3 days had passed since the wedding, yet Ella still found herself replaying that night like a song she couldn't stop humming. The glow of laughter, the scent of roses and rain, and his voice, calm, steady, and impossibly kind. She told herself it was just a passing moment, a small spark in a crowded evening. But as she sat at her work desk Monday morning, staring at the same unfinished design she'd opened an hour ago, her mind drifted back to Math again and again. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, like he actually saw her, not the polite, fleeting glances she was used to, but the kind that lingered, that made her feel she mattered, even for a night. Her best friend Mia called just as Ella took a sip of her lukewarm coffee. "Hey, wedding girl," Mia teased. "You survived the big day?" Ella smiled faintly. "Barely. It was nice." "Nice?" Mia gasped dramatically. "That's all? Come on. I saw photos. You looked like the main character. Spill." Ella hesitated, her fingers tapping the desk. "There was someone," she admitted softly. "Ooh, there it is. He just sat at my table. Said he needed a favor, asked me to pretend I was with him so people would stop trying to set him up." "Wait, that's either the start of a rom-com or a Netflix original," Mia laughed. "And then?" "And then nothing. He left. That's it." "Oh, you didn't get his number? Ella!" "I know," I sighed, rubbing her temple. "It didn't feel like that kind of night. It was easy, real, but temporary." Mia's voice softened. "Still, sometimes temporary moments leave permanent marks." Ella didn't reply. She didn't need to, because Mia was right. The day moved on in quiet motions, phone calls, client emails, endless revisions. But somewhere between sending her last draft and shutting down her laptop, her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. She almost ignored it, assuming it was work, but then she saw the message preview. "So, does our fake relationship come with post-wedding check-ins?" Math. Her heart skipped, twice. She read it again, smiling without meaning to. The name, the tone. It was him. For a moment, she just stared at the message, unsure how to reply. Should she sound casual, amused, excited? But before she could overthink it, she typed, "Well, that depends. Do fake relationships have rules?" His response came almost instantly. Only one. Both parties must enjoy pretending. Ella chuckled under her breath. Smooth, Mr. Math. Their chat flowed easily, just like their conversation at the wedding. He told her he had returned to the city the next morning. She told him she was still recovering from too much dancing and too little food. The simplicity of it all felt comforting. Then, after a pause, Math sent another message. "I'd like to see you again, for real this time." Her heart fluttered. For real. The words carried weight, a soft promise. But part of her hesitated. What if this was just politeness, a passing thought? Still, something inside whispered, "Take the chance." She texted back, "When?" Tomorrow, 6 p.m. I'll send a car. You don't have to. I insist. You saved me once. Let me return the favor. She smiled, shaking her head, her pulse quick with anticipation. A favor, she murmured to herself, recalling that first night. It had all started with a simple request. Pretend you're with me. When she finally set her phone down, she couldn't stop the warmth that spread through her. For the first time in a long while, she was looking forward to something, not out of hope or desperation, but because it felt right. The next evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, a sleek black car waited outside her apartment just as Math promised. The driver greeted her politely, holding the door open. Inside, her nerves danced. She'd chosen a soft cream dress, elegant but simple. Her reflection in the window looked calm, but her heart was anything but. The car slowed as it turned down a narrow street lined with golden lights and ivy-covered buildings. It stopped in front of a quiet restaurant, nothing flashy, just warm, intimate, and softly lit. Math was already there, waiting near the entrance. He wasn't in a suit this time, just a navy shirt, sleeves rolled up, a gentleness in his smile that immediately settled her nerves. "Hi," he said, his tone easy, familiar, like they'd known each other for years. "Hi," I replied, returning the smile. "I figured," he said, opening the door for her, "if we're going to pretend again, this time it should come with dinner." She laughed softly. "And what are we pretending tonight?" Math looked at her, eyes glinting with warmth. "That we don't already feel like old friends." And as they stepped inside, the hum of quiet music and candlelight wrapped them around. A new beginning unfolding, one gentle heartbeat at a time.
The restaurant glowed with soft amber light, not the blinding shimmer of wealth, but the kind that made everything feel slower, gentler, and somehow more real. The faint hum of jazz floated through the air, mingling with the clink of glasses and the murmur of quiet laughter. Ella followed Math to a small corner table by the window. Outside, the city lights sparkled like fallen stars scattered across wet pavement. "This place is beautiful," she said as she sat down. Math smiled. "It's one of my favorites. Quiet, private. The food's good, but the atmosphere's better." She raised an eyebrow playfully. "So you bring all your pretend dates here?" He chuckled, a low, easy sound. "Actually, no. You're the first." The waiter appeared, offering menus, but Math waved gently. "Surprises. Something light, and the house red." Once the waiter left, a comfortable silence settled between them. Ella traced her finger along the rim of her glass. "So, Mr. Mysterious, what exactly do you do when you're not rescuing women from empty wedding tables?" He smiled faintly. "Work, mostly. Too much of it, if I'm honest." "Doing what?" He hesitated just long enough for her to notice. "Investments, business strategy, boring things that sound more impressive than they are." She tilted her head. "You mean billionaire things?" He blinked, surprised, then amused. "You knew?" "The car, the watch, the quiet confidence." She shrugged. "It wasn't hard to guess." Math looked down, swirling the wine in his glass. "It's funny. People usually notice first, and then they only see that, the money, the image. But you didn't," she said softly. "No," he admitted, his gaze lifting to hers. "You didn't. That's why I sat at your table." For a moment, the noise of the restaurant faded. His eyes, warm and thoughtful, held hers, and something unspoken passed between them. It wasn't attraction alone, it was recognition. The quiet realization that both of them had built walls for very different reasons. Their food arrived, delicate plates of roasted vegetables, seared salmon, and a drizzle of sauce that looked too pretty to touch. They ate slowly, talking about little things, favorite movies, childhood dreams, the kind of questions that reveal more in the way they're answered than in the words themselves. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked suddenly. "Normal life?" Math smiled faintly. "Define normal." "You know,
The kind where you can walk into a cafe and no one looks twice, where people know you for you, not your last name or your balance sheet. He sighed, looking out the window. More than you'd think. I worked my way up from nothing, Ella. But somewhere along the line, I stopped belonging anywhere. The higher you climb, the fewer people you can trust. Ella's expression softened. That sounds lonely. It is, he admitted quietly. That's why that night at the wedding meant something. You didn't ask for anything. You didn't try to impress me. You stayed. She smiled gently. Maybe I stayed because you looked like you needed someone to. Their eyes met again, this time longer. Something tender lingered there, fragile and warm. Ella, he said softly, his voice low, I don't usually do this. What, dinner with women? She teased. He shook his head, smiling. No. Talk like this. Let people in. Then I guess I should feel honored. You should, he said with mock seriousness, and they both laughed, the tension breaking just enough to make the air lighter again. After dinner, Math suggested a walk. The night was cool, the street lamps casting long golden shadows along the quiet lane. They strolled side by side, hands brushing now and then, every small touch sparking something unspoken. Do you ever think, Ella said softly, that some moments are meant to happen twice? Like the universe gives you a second chance just to see if you'll notice? Math glanced at her, intrigued. And which moment do you think this is? The second one, she said, smiling. The first was the wedding. He stopped walking then, turning to face her. Then I'm glad I noticed. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. The city seemed to slow around them, the air filled with the scent of rain, the hush of distant traffic, the quiet rhythm of two hearts finding their own timing. When he finally reached for her hand, it wasn't sudden or dramatic. It was simple, natural, like something that had been waiting patiently to happen. She didn't pull away. They stood there for a moment longer, just breathing in the silence. It wasn't love yet, not quite, but it was the beginning of something that felt dangerously close to it. When Math finally walked her to the car, he opened the door and said quietly, Thank you for tonight. She smiled up at him. I should be thanking you. No, he said softly. You reminded me what real feels like. As the car pulled away, Ella glanced back through the window, Math still standing there, hands in his pockets, watching her go. The city lights framed him like a memory she already knew she'd revisit over and over again. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone.
Days turned into weeks, and what began as a pretend connection slowly became something Ella looked forward to, quietly, instinctively. There were no grand declarations, no lavish gifts, just small, steady gestures. Math sending her coffee on mornings she mentioned feeling tired, surprise lunch deliveries with handwritten notes, and messages that began with a simple, "How's your day?" but somehow always made her heart skip. And then there were their evenings, long drives through the city, quiet dinners, and late-night conversations that melted hours away without either of them noticing. Math had a way of making ordinary moments feel extraordinary. He listened when she spoke. He noticed the smallest details, how she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, how her eyes lit up when she talked about art. But still, there was something guarded in him, something hidden behind that calm smile. It was a Friday evening when Ella first noticed it clearly. They were sitting on a park bench, watching the last of the sunset fade behind the skyline. Math had been unusually quiet, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked softly. He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just thinking about how fast time moves. How one moment you think you have everything figured out, and the next, it all changes." Ella tilted her head. "That sounds like experience talking." "Maybe it is," he said, exhaling slowly. "I wasn't always this person." "What do you mean?" Math hesitated, his fingers tracing the edge of the bench. "People see the success, the name,
the money, but they don't see what it cost. She didn't interrupt. She just waited, quietly, giving him space. I started my first company at 22. It took off fast, too fast. I lost friends, sleep, years of my life to it. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I lost her. Her? Ella asked gently. He nodded once. My fiancée. The air seemed to still. We were together for 3 years, Math said, low voice. She believed in me when no one else did, but I kept choosing work. One more deal, one more meeting, one more promise to make it up to her later. And then later never came. Ella felt her heart tighten. I'm sorry, she whispered. She left one morning. No anger, no goodbye, just a note. I hope you find what you're chasing. And the truth is, I never did. Silence settled between them, deep and fragile, the kind of silence that holds more emotion than words ever could. Finally, Ella reached out, her hand resting gently on his. Maybe you weren't meant to find what you were chasing. Maybe you were meant to find something better. He looked at her then, really looked, and for a fleeting moment the walls around him seemed to fade. Sometimes you say things that make me forget how guarded I am. She smiled faintly. That's a good thing, isn't it? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned his hand over, fingers intertwining with hers. It's terrifying, he admitted. But yes, it's good. Later that night, after he drove her home, Ella stood at her window long after the car disappeared down the street. The city was quiet, but her thoughts weren't. She wasn't sure what scared her more, the fact that Math had been hurt or how much she already cared about someone she barely knew a month ago. She reached for her phone, typing a message, but deleting it twice before sending. Thank you for trusting me tonight. A minute later, his reply appeared. Thank you for not asking me to be someone I'm not. Ella smiled, her chest warm with emotion she couldn't quite name. The following days carried a new kind of energy between them, softer, deeper. Math was still reserved at times, but there was a gentleness now, a quiet gratitude for her presence. One evening he took her to an art gallery. It was almost empty, the lights dimmed to let the paintings glow softly on the walls. Ella moved from piece to piece, her eyes shining. Art always reminds me that beauty doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it just has to be honest. Math watched her, the way she spoke, the way she seemed to find meaning in things most people overlooked. You know, you're kind of like that too. What like? She asked, smiling. Beautiful, in the quietest way. Her heart fluttered. She looked at him, and for the first time she saw not the billionaire everyone whispered about, but a man still learning how to be seen without his armor. And maybe, just maybe, she was falling for him. That night, as he walked her to her door, Math lingered for a moment. His eyes searched hers, unsure, yet full of something real. Ella, I don't know where this is going, but I know I don't want it to end. She smiled, her voice barely a whisper. Then let's not end it. He leaned in then, not rushed, not hungry, just gentle. His lips brushed hers, a slow, careful promise. It wasn't fireworks. It was warmth, steady, honest, and quietly unforgettable. And when he finally stepped back, he smiled, that same guarded smile. The one she now understood wasn't distance at all. It was vulnerability, wearing courage's disguise.
Love has a way of sneaking up quietly, not with fanfare, but with small, steady moments that slowly weave themselves into your days. For Ella, life with Math had become a rhythm she didn't realize she was craving. Morning messages, evening drives, shared silence that felt like home. Weeks passed, and every time she saw him, something about him seemed lighter. The tiredness in his eyes had softened. He laughed more now, smiled more easily, and sometimes, when he looked at her, there was a warmth that made her forget everything else. But love, as beautiful as it is, doesn't come without tests. And theirs arrived one quiet afternoon. Ella was in her studio, lost in work, when her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She almost ignored it, but instinct made her swipe to answer. "Hello? Is this Ella Morgan?" a woman's voice asked, smooth, polite, and faintly guarded. "Yes, who's this?" There was a pause, the kind that carried more meaning than words. "My name is Claire." Something in the woman's tone sent a strange chill through Ella's chest. "I'm Math's fiancé." For a moment, Ella couldn't breathe. "His what?" The voice softened, but the words were clear. "I just thought you should know who you've been seeing. Math doesn't talk about his personal life, but we've been together for years. Things have been complicated, but we're working through it." Ella's pulse thundered. "That's not possible. He told me—" She stopped, her voice catching. "I know what he tells people. He told me the same things once." And then, just as quietly as she had called, the woman hung up. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Ella sank into her chair, her hands trembling. Her mind raced, confusion, disbelief, hurt, all tangled into one sharp ache. Could it be true? No, Math wasn't like that. He was kind, sincere, open. He'd told her about losing someone, the woman who'd left him years ago. Could Claire be her? Could she be back? Her heart wanted to believe in him, but her mind whispered caution. That night, she didn't answer his message, nor the one after that. By the third call, she finally picked up. "Ella?" His voice was warm, relieved. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me. I got a call today from a woman named Claire." The silence that followed was heavy. "I see," Math said finally, his tone low. "What did she tell you?" "That she's your fiancé." A pause, long enough to confirm the truth she didn't want to hear. "She was, a long time ago." Her throat tightened. She didn't sound like someone who thinks it's over. "I know," he murmured, "and I should have told you sooner. Claire came back a few weeks ago, out of nowhere. She wanted to talk, to fix things, but it was too late. I told her I'd moved on. And she called me," Ella said bitterly, "to remind me I'm the replacement." "No." Matt's voice hardened, not in anger, but in desperation. "You are not a replacement. Claire is part of my past. You're my now." Ella wanted to believe him, every word, but doubt had already crept in. "Then why didn't you tell me?" He sighed quietly. "Because I was afraid of losing what we were building. Afraid that if you saw how broken my past was, you'd walk away." Tears welled in her eyes. "Math, honesty isn't what breaks people. Secrets do." There was a long pause, the kind that feels like goodbye. Finally, Math said softly, "You're right. I should have trusted you more." "Maybe," she whispered, voice trembling, "you should have trusted love more." Before he could reply, she ended the call. That night, Ella lay awake, her heart aching with 1,000 questions. She wasn't angry, just hurt, because for the first time she realized how much he mattered to her. And maybe that was what scared her most. 2 days passed, silence stretched between them like an ocean. Then one evening, as she left her studio, she found him waiting by her car. He looked exhausted, not the polished, composed Math she knew, but the man beneath it all. "I didn't want to show up uninvited, but I couldn't let you think you meant less to me than you do." Ella's voice was quiet, cautious. "What do you want me to say, Math? That it doesn't hurt? Because it does. I know. he said, stepping closer. "But I also know that what we have, it's real, and I'll prove that if you let me." For a moment, she said nothing. The ache in her chest was raw, but so was the truth in his eyes. She wanted to forgive him, but forgiveness takes time and courage. Finally, she looked up at him and whispered, "Then show me. Not with words, Math, with what comes next." He nodded slowly, his gaze filled with quiet determination. "I will," he promised. "You'll see." And as he walked away that night, the air between them felt fragile, but not broken. Because sometimes love doesn't end when it's tested. Sometimes it's only just beginning to prove itself. The days after Math's confession were quieter, the kind of quiet that hums with everything left unsaid. Ella tried to lose herself in work, in the comfort of routine, but every design she sketched seemed to echo him. The way he listened, the way his smile softened when he looked at her, the way his presence filled the spaces she didn't know were empty. And even though her heart still ached, a small part of her missed him, missed the peace that came from simply being near him. But love, when it's real, doesn't disappear just because it hurts. Sometimes it lingers, waiting patiently for forgiveness to catch up with it. It was a Sunday afternoon when it happened. Ella was at the park, sitting on the same bench where they had watched the sunset weeks ago. The trees swayed softly, children laughed in the distance, and for a moment everything felt still, as if the world was holding its breath. Then she heard footsteps behind her. "Mind if I sit?" Her heart recognized the voice before her mind did. She turned, and there he was, Math. He looked different somehow, not in his clothes or his posture, but in his eyes. The tiredness had been replaced with something else, something steady. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi," she replied, her tone calm but unsure. He sat beside her, leaving just enough space to respect the silence. "I didn't want to push. I just wanted to see you. To talk." Ella nodded slowly. "Then talk." He exhaled, looking out at the water. "I spent years building a life that looked perfect from the outside, but it was empty until that night at the wedding. I didn't know who I was looking for, but somehow I found you." She looked at him then, really looked. The sincerity in his face was raw, almost vulnerable. Claire came back because she saw what I had lost, but what she didn't realize was that I had already found something I didn't even know I needed. You. Ella's eyes shimmered, though she tried to hide it. "Math." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, worn notebook. After she left, I started writing. Thoughts, regrets, moments I never said aloud. This was how I reminded myself to feel human again. And lately, every page has been about you. He opened it gently, flipping to the last page. There, written in neat handwriting, were the words, "Some love stories don't begin with fireworks. They begin with a quiet seat at an empty table and a simple request. Pretend you're with me. And before you know it, the pretending becomes the most real thing you've ever felt." "I don't want to pretend anymore," Math said softly. "I don't want you to be another chapter I regret not fighting for." She turned toward him, her heart pounding. "Math, I was hurt. Not because you had a past, we all do, but because you didn't trust me enough to share it." "I know," he said quietly, "and I'll spend as long as it takes proving that I've learned from it, that I've learned you." For a long moment, they just sat there, the afternoon light catching in her hair, his hand resting open between them, waiting. Finally, Ella reached for it. The touch was gentle, but it spoke louder than words ever could. Forgiveness, love, understanding, all in that simple gesture. "I don't want perfect," she whispered. "I just want honest." His fingers tightened around hers. "Then that's what I'll give you. Always." Months later, their story found a new rhythm, one built on openness and laughter. They traveled sometimes, small trips, quiet escapes. Math would show her parts of the city she'd never seen, and she'd remind him what life looked like beyond meetings and boardrooms. One evening, while walking through the same garden where they had first met at the wedding, Math stopped suddenly. The air was warm, scented with jasmine. "Do you remember this place?" he asked. Ella laughed softly. "How could I forget? You were the stranger who asked me to pretend. And you were the woman who made me wish I didn't have to." He smiled then, that same gentle, genuine smile that once hid behind walls. But this time, there were no walls, just him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Ella froze, her eyes widening. "Math." He stepped closer, voice steady, eyes tender. "I don't have a fancy speech this time. No grand promises, no perfection. Just this. I love you. You were my peace when I didn't know I needed it, and my beginning when I thought my story had already ended." Tears glimmered in her eyes as he opened the box, a simple, elegant ring catching the golden light. "Ella Margin," he whispered, "will you stop pretending with me forever?" Her laughter broke through her tears, soft, joyous, disbelieving. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times yes." Math slipped the ring onto her finger, his hand trembling slightly as she leaned in and kissed him, slow, tender, full of everything they'd fought through to get here. And in that moment, surrounded by music, laughter, and the echoes of their first meeting, Ella realized something simple and true. Sometimes, love doesn't begin with fireworks or grand gestures. Sometimes, it begins quietly, with two lonely hearts at a wedding table pretending to belong, and ends with a promise that they finally do.